They came from the horizon like a moving city of wood and canvas. Thousands of ships, tens of thousands of men, drums beating in disciplined rhythm, banners snapping in the salt wind, carrying the authority of the largest empire the world had ever seen. From the Mongol war councils, Japan was not supposed to be a war. It was supposed to be a correction, a brief, decisive demonstration of power that would bring a distant island kingdom into the natural order of the Mongol world. Tribute would follow. Submission would follow. Resistance would collapse under the weight of numbers, organization, and fear. But across the water, watching the sea darken with foreign sails, stood warriors who had never seen an army like this and yet were prepared to die to the last man before kneeling. Both sides believed they understood the coming war. Both sides were wrong. What followed was not merely a clash of samurai and Mongols, bows and bombs, swords and shields. It was a collision between two military civilizations built on entirely different ideas of war: honor, discipline, and command. And hidden beneath a clash of steel was something even more decisive: logistics stretched beyond reason, doctrine misapplied to unfamiliar terrain, and an empire that mistook momentum for inevitability. This is the true story behind the failed Mongol invasion of Japan. A story of miscalculation, adaptation, and the brutal truth that the battlefield always reveals. The Mongol Empire of the 13th century was not simply large. It was revolutionary. From the steppes of Central Asia, it had consumed kingdoms with terrifying speed. China fractured, Persia borned. Eastern Europe reeled. Entire armies dissolved before Mongol formations that moved faster, communicated better, and struck harder than anything the medieval world had known. By the time Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, consolidated power as ruler of the Yuan dynasty, conquest had become institutionalized. War was no longer an act of desperation or glory. It was a system. The Mongols believed war was won before the first arrow was fired, through intelligence networks, diplomacy backed by terror, and overwhelming force applied at the decisive moment. Enemies were not meant to fight. They were meant to submit. Cities that resisted were erased as examples. Cities that surrendered were spared and absorbed. Japan, from the Mongol perspective, was an anomaly, an island beyond the normal arteries of land warfare. Militarily untested against imperial forces, politically fragmented under a shogunate that ruled in the emperor's name but depended on feudal loyalty rather than centralized command. To Kublai Khan, this was not a peer. It was an unfinished piece of the map. So he sent letters, formal demands written in the language of empire, carried by envoys who had watched kings kneel elsewhere. The message was clear: acknowledge Mongol supremacy, send tribute, and be spared the consequences of resistance. The Japanese response was silence. Not negotiation, not compromise. Silence. To the Mongol court, this was not bravery. It was ignorance. And ignorance, Teibilibed, would be corrected by force. But Japan was not ignorant. It was different. The warriors of Japan, the samurai, did not fight wars the way continental armies did. Their military culture had grown inward, shaped by centuries of internal conflict rather than imperial expansion. Warfare was personal. Combat was intimate. Reputation mattered as much as victory. The samurai did not think in terms of mass maneuver or combined arms. They thought in terms of individual valor, mounted archery duels, and decisive sword combat. A warrior announced his lineage before battle. He sought recognition as much as triumph. Their equipment reflected this. The long, asymmetrical Yumi bow, designed for mounted use. The Malarama, flexible enough for individual movement. Swords forged not for formation fighting, but for lethal precision in close quarters. Command structures were decentralized. Loyalty flowed upward through personal bonds, not bureaucratic chains. Samurai answered to local lords, who answered to the shogunate. In war, cohesion depended on shared values, more than strict discipline. This system had weaknesses. It was slow to mobilize. Coordination was difficult. Large-scale operations were rare, but it also had strengths the Mongols did not understand. The samurai did not retreat easily. They did not surrender, and they did not measure victory the same way the Mongols did. When the first Mongol invasion force assembled in 1274, it was a multinational army: Mongols, Chinese, and Koreans, all operating under UN command. This was imperial warfare at its peak. Infantry drilled in formations, engineers skilled in siegecraft, naval forces built in Korean shipyards, capable of transporting armies across open sea. The Mongols had conquered continents. Surely an island would fall. But the sea was the first enemy they underestimated. Naval logistics were never the Mongols' strength. Their empire was built on horses, not holes. Ships were constructed quickly, often with green timber. Crews were pressed into service. Coordination between land-based commanders and naval operations was untested at this scale. Still, confidence remained absolute. When the invasion fleet reached Tsushima and Iki Islands, the Mongols demonstrated exactly how they had conquered the world. They landed in force. They fought in formations. They used coordinated volleys of arrows, shields locked, advancing methodically. The samurai who met them were shocked. This was not the warfare they knew. Mongol infantry did not break formation to accept individual challenges. They did not pause for ritual. They advanced as a wall, firing arrows in disciplined waves. They used gunpowder weapons, primitive bombs hurled into samurai ranks, exploding with sound and fire, terrifying men and horses alike. Japanese warriors who rode forward expecting duels were cut down by massed fire. In those first encounters, the Mongols were everything they believed themselves to be: efficient, relentless, superior. When they reached Hakata Bay on Kyushu, the shock deepened. Mongol troops landed in force, driving defenders back. Samurai attacks were brave, even ferocious but disorganized against tight formations. By all logic of imperial warfare, this should have been the beginning of the end. But something was already going wrong. The Mongols did not press inland. They withdrew to their ships at night. It was a decision that seemed prudent at the time. The army was unfamiliar with the terrain. Supply lines depended entirely on the fleet. Japanese resistance was heavier than expected, and darkness brought uncertainty. But that hesitation mattered. That single pause gave the Japanese time to understand what they were facing. An adaptation began. Samurai commanders quickly realized individual heroics would not break Mongol formations. So they changed. They launched night raids. Small groups attacked ships directly, killing crews, burning vessels, retreating into darkness. These were not battles of conquest. They were battles of attrition. The Mongol army, built to crush opponents quickly, found itself bleeding slowly. Then the weather changed. A storm rose in Hakata Bay. Violent and sudden, Mongol ships, anchored close together, smashed into one another. Poorly built hulls broke apart. Soldiers drowned, trapped in armor. The storm did not destroy the entire invasion force, but it shattered momentum. Faced with losses, stretched supplies, and an enemy that refused to collapse, the Mongol commanders withdrew. Back in the Yuan court, the narrative was adjusted. This was not defeat, it was reconnaissance. Japan had resisted, but now its weaknesses were known. The next invasion would be overwhelming. What followed was not preparation, it was escalation. Kublai Khan ordered a second invasion on a scale far greater than the first. This time, there would be no hesitation. Two massive fleets would converge on Japan, one from Korea, one from southern China. Together they would bring over 100,000 men. It was one of the largest amphibious operations in pre-modern history. But size introduced new problems. Shipyards worked at impossible speed. Crews were inexperienced. Supplies were calculated on paper, not reality. Command structures became tangled between Mongol, Chinese, and Korean officers. Meanwhile, Japan was not waiting. Along the shores of Hakata Bay, the Japanese built wall-stone fortifications designed specifically to prevent mass landings. Samurai trained for coordinated defense. Messengers rode constantly. The island was mobilized, not for glory but for survival. When the second invasion began in 1281, the Mongols again achieved initial success. Outlying islands fell. Japanese defenders fought desperately, but when the fleets reached Kyushu, they met something new. prepared resistance. Walls blocked landings. Arrows rained from fortified positions. Samurai night raids intensified. Ships were boarded and burned. Commanders were assassinated in their tents. The Mongol doctrine shock, momentum, decisive engagement failed to materialize. Weeks passed. Supplies dwindled. Disease spread. Men waited aboard ships, never designed to serve as floating fortresses. And then the sky darkened. The storm that struck in August of 1281 was unlike anything the fleet had faced. Winds howled. Waves rose like mountains. Anchors dragged. Ships collided and splintered. Thousands died without ever drawing a sword. The survivors washed ashore to be hunted down by Japanese defenders. This time, there was no retreat. The invasion was annihilated. In Japan, the storm became known as Kamakazitha, divine wind. But divine explanation alone hides the truth. The Mongols did not lose because the gods intervened. They lost because their system was stretched beyond its limits. They misjudged naval warfare. They underestimated a decentralized enemy capable of rapid adaptation. They relied on scale where resilience was required. Japan did not win because it was stronger. It won because it endured. The samurai learned to fight a new kind of war. They adapted tactics. They exploited weaknesses. They turned the Mongols' greatest strength into a liability. And the Mongol Empire learned something far more painful. That conquest has borders not drawn on maps but enforced by reality. After Japan, the Mongols never again attempted such an invasion. The cost was too high. The lesson to clear: power, no matter how vast, is never absolute. In the end, the failed invasion of Japan was not a story of East versus West, or tradition versus technology. It was a story of miscalculation, of believing that what worked everywhere else would work again, of forgetting that war is not just numbers and weapons but weather, culture, logistics, and the will of those who refuse to yield. And as the wreckage of the Mongol fleet drifted across the shores of Kyushu, the sea whispered a truth every empire eventually learns. The world does not bend forever, and sometimes it breaks those who believe it must.